In the frozen mud of occupied Soviet territory, on October 3, 1943, a lone railway engineer named Dmitry Volkov crouched just 50 meters from the vital rail line linking Berlin to the Eastern Front. His binoculars fixed on a thundering German panzer train, loaded with 40 Tiger I tanks, 18 artillery pieces, and ammunition sufficient to sustain an armored division for 3 weeks. Racing at 60 kilometers per hour, toward the front lines where it would arrive in 14 hours to unleash devastation on Soviet soldiers by tomorrow night. This marked the 9th such panzer train that week, as the Germans rushed reinforcements eastward to blunt the Soviet offensive around Kharkov. The rail line through Smelinsk funneled 12 to 15 military trains daily, ferrying 3,000 tons of equipment and 5,000 replacement troops. Yet Soviet partisans could only watch in frustration as every attempt at sabotage failed miserably. Explosives on the tracks were discovered by German inspection crews, patrolling every kilometer twice a day. Sabotage switches fell under the watchful eyes of machine gun nests and guard dogs at every junction. Even demolished bridges were rebuilt in 36 hours with prefabricated spans. The Wehrmacht had fortified this lifeline with armed patrols every 500 meters, observation posts every 2 kilometers, and repair crews every 10 kilometers, responding to any threat in minutes and slaughtering partisans before they could inflict real damage. The grim tally spoke volumes. Soviet partisan units in the Smelinsk region had lost 340 fighters in futile bids to disrupt the line, derailing just 3 trains carrying insignificant supplies, while the heavily guarded panzer trains rumbled through daylight, unscathed. But Dmitry Volkov, at 41 years old, a pre-war railway maintenance engineer, more versed in track geometry than warfare, gazed at the speeding train and grasped a truth others overlooked. You do not need to shatter the track to derail a train. You merely need to alter its geometry by 3 millimeters. What the Germans remained oblivious to, what Soviet partisan leaders ignored, what no one in occupied Europe suspected, was that this unassuming technician was on the verge of devising a sabotage method so cunning and invisible it would derail 40 German trains in the ensuing 7 months, requiring no explosives, leaving no traces, and exploiting a forgotten principle of railway engineering where the margin between stability and disaster hinged on 3.2 millimeters. Railway tracks appear deceptively simple. 2 parallel steel rails spaced 1,520 millimeters apart, in Soviet gauge, anchored on wooden ties amid crushed stone ballast. Yet high-speed trains cling to them only through exacting precision in spacing, level height, and vertical angle, any deviation spelling derailment. The Germans knew this well. Their railway security units scoured every kilometer twice daily for blatant sabotage, like severed rails, ruined ties, shifted ballast, or planted charges. Blind to minuscule geometry tweaks, because no one imagined derailing trains by making tracks subtly imperfect, until Dmitry Volkov did precisely that. Born in Smolensk on February 18, 1902, Volkov hailed from a lineage of railway workers. His grandfather laid sections of the Trans-Siberian Railway, his father supervised track upkeep, instilling in young Dmitry that rails were precision tools masquerading as rugged steel. He pursued engineering at Moscow Technical University, his 1926 thesis delving into track gauge variations and derailment risks. Dismissed as overly niche, but teaching him that trains topple from deviations as tiny as plus or minus 3 millimeters in gauge tolerance. At 1,523 millimeters, trains hummed safely up to 80 kilometers per hour. At 1,525 millimeters, minor oscillations emerged, but stability held to 60 kilometers per hour. Yet at 1,528 millimeters, catastrophe struck above 45 kilometers per hour. An 8 millimeter shift across 1,520 millimeters, equating to a 0.5% error. Invisible to the eye, but lethal at speed. When Germany invaded in 1941, Volkov turned partisan, not from ideology or combat zeal, but after the occupiers slain his wife and daughter in Smelensk, channeling his grief into engineering acumen and vengeance. He joined a unit in the southern forests under former Red Army Major Alexei Fedorov, who tasked him with demolitions, despite Volkov's protests that maintaining rails differed vastly from destroying them. But conventional blasts proved suicidal against ironclad German defenses. By September 1943, Fedorov's group mourned 23 fallen comrades for derailing one near food train, repaired in 4 hours. There has to be a better way, Volkov urged Fedorov after a raid claimed 6 lives. Like what? The major demanded. The Germans spot everything. What if we skip explosives altogether? How do you derail without blowing it up? By warping the track subtly. Fedorov eyed him skeptically. Explain. Volkov sketched a rail profile. Wheels grip thanks to flanges hugging the inner edges. Gauge precision keeps them locked. Widen it by millimeters and flanges slip free at speed. So we pry the rails apart. Precisely, but via shimming, not brute force. Shimming means what? Insert slim wedges under one rail side to tilt it outward. Millimeters of angle shift, effective gauge enough for derailment, while the track appears pristine to inspectors hunting obvious flaws. How slim exactly? 3 millimeters, like 2 stacked coins. You claim 2 coins thickness derails a panzer train if positioned right. Absolutely. Prove it. On October 5, 1943, Volkov and 3 comrades crept to the line at midnight, 12 kilometers south of Smelinsk, in dense woods where patrols circled every 30 minutes, granting a 25-minute window. Volkov's bag held innocuous tools, a pry bar, hammer, steel shims 3 millimeters thick, and calipers. The shims crafted from scrap into 100 millimeter by 25 millimeter strips, to nestle under base plates. The tactic was straightforward. Pry one rail up, slide 3 shims beneath the outer base, hammer secure, lower the rail to tilt at 3 millimeters out. Bumping gauge from 1520 to 1527 millimeters. Imperceptible yet fatal, over 50 kilometers per hour. The shimmed both rails across 15 meters on a curve in 7 minutes flat. It looks unchanged, a partisan murmured. Exactly the beauty. They melted into shadows and waited. At 3:47, a freight train's headlight pierced the night, barreling at 65 kilometers per hour. No prime target, but ideal test. The locomotive hit the section, caused 2 seconds, then its front bogie jumped, plowing earth as cars piled in a screeching, splintering chaos of metal and steam. 14 cars mangled, track ruined for 200 meters. Germans swarmed in 18 minutes, probing for bombs or cuts but deeming it maintenance failure, fixing it in 48 hours. From afar, Volkov smiled, his innovation triumphed. By October, November 15th, 1943, 1940 hours, a troop train with 1,200 soldiers derailed outside Orsha. 14 cars tumbled, 89 killed, 240 wounded. November 19th, 1943, 3:10 hours, a fuel train spilled 400 tons near Mogilev, igniting a 6-hour inferno. The rhythm persisted, a derailment every 3 to 4 days along supply routes. Germans scrutinized wrecks for clues, uncovering no tampering. Inspectors eyed tracks pre-trained for conventional threats, overlooking hidden shims. By December 1943, panic gripped German rail chiefs. General Major Rudolf Gerke eyed stats. October 3 derailments, November 11, December 16, by the 20th. We lose more to this than bombers, Gerke fumed. Why escalating despite our upkeep? No answers surfaced. Wehrmacht slowed trains to 60 km per hour max, slashing capacity 25%. Fewer runs starved the front. Volkov counted by shimming curves where derailments hit, at 40 to 45 km per hour. Wrecks endured. By January 1944, crisis peaked. 3 months blockages tallied 340 hours, stalling 12,000 tons supplies, 8,000 troops, 200 vehicles. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein wired high command. Rail unreliability hampers supplies, demand fix. Specialists from Deutsche Reichsbahn measured gauges, rails, ties, ballast, detecting. Not in this. But on February 8, 1944, engineer Klaus Hoffmann, near Smolensk, lifted a rail post wreck, spotting 3 3mm shims under the outer base. Sabotage, he breathed, gauging 1,520 clean. 1,527 shimmed. Alerts flew. Inspect under bases, lift rails everywhere. Exhausting toil over thousands of plates per kilometer. Yet desperate Germans uncovered thousands of shims, February to April 1944, grasping 5 months' invisible war. Gerki raged yet admired. Partisans weaponized our rails with scrap. Derailments ebbed as protocols tightened, slowing schedules further. But Volkov evolved. Shimming tunnels, bridges, yards too vast to scour, then single rail shims for canterers on curves. Gauges read normal but super-evolution flawed. Wrecks resumed. Through summer 1944, this duel raged. Shims set, some found, others claimed, slashing German rail output to 60% of October 1943 levels, not from bombs or blasts but 3mm stealth. Impact echoed. 40 confirmed derailments, 18,000 tons supplies lost, 67 tanks and 24 guns ruined, 340 Germans killed, 890 wounded, 1,240 downtime hours, 180,000 inspection man-hours, 35% capacity drop. Soviet bombers in contrast wrecked 22 trains, 8,000 tons, losing 47 planes and 235 crew. Volkov shims doubled efficacy cheaply. The method spread to Polish, Yugoslav, French resistors by mid-1944, sparking Europe-wide mystery wrecks. Germans struggled to thwart amid manpower shortages. May 8, 1945, Europe's war closed. Volkov survived, aiding liberations, teaching westward to Poland and Czechoslovakia. Post-war he rebuilt rails in Smelinsk, shunning medals and Moscow posts. I just want to mend them right now. Soviets classified shimming, too replicable for publicity. Volkov faded unsung, his name absent from histories. In 1958, a journal published his 1926 thesis on gauge flaws, theoretical veil over wartime feats. Western spies gleaned via German captives. A 1952 CIA memo flagged its stealth risks for US rails. Cold War manuals taught defenses. Modern geometry cars now scan sub-millimeter precision, obsoleting shims. Volkov died in 1977 at 75. Obituary lauding rail service, sans war nods. Glasnost in 1989 unearthed records. Historian Marina Sukova traced Volkov references, interviewing survivor Ivan Kravchenko at 71. Dmitri taught sabotage needs no bangs. Precision slays, rails are exact. Tweak 3mm and tons crash. Germans sought spectacle. He delivered unseen genius. Her 1991 article, The Engineer Who Derailed 40 Trains with 3mm shims, reached 300 readers obscurely. In 2003, St. Petersburg's Russian State Railway Museum displayed 3 recovered shims, plaque noting designer D.A. Volkov, over 40 derailments, 1943 to 1944. Mere glass-encased scrap, for a man who outdid bombers, spared Soviets by silent kills, wielded knowledge unforeseen. Fedorov's 1965 memoir, hailed, Volkov no classic fighter yet slew more via wit than bullets, starving foes, ammo-denying tanks, his unseen triumph. German post-war logs conceded, partisan sabotage shifted from crude blasts to geometry mastery. By 1944, shimming defied counters, sans exhaustive checks beyond means, proving tech irrelevant against vulnerability insight. Defenses arose from Volkov's legacy. Final tally, 40 confirmed derailments, perhaps 15 to 20 more veiled, 340 Germans dead, 890 hurt, 18,000 tons gone, 91 armored losses. Partisan shim deaths, 7. Yield 18,000 tons per loss, versus 200 for blasts. 35% German rail cripple, aided Soviet pushes. Heroes vary. Some blaze guns, others grasp 3mm topples, 200 tons at 60 kilometers per hour. Volkov lived mending what he masterfully broke. Unclaimed glory his. Dmitry Volkov, 1902 to 1977. Engineer who knew 3mm divided safe from ruin, and wielded it. to derail 40 German trains with scrap.